Hi guys, For Tutor here. Today we're going to be talking about Spanish verbs, continuation of the Spanish introductory series. We're also going to be talking about the two most important verbs in Spanish, ser and estar. Spanish verbs are categorized by their two-letter endings in their basic form, called the infinitive form. There are three different types of endings, AR, ER, and IR. All three of these verbs change depending on the subject, but they change differently. Here is how they change. Well, for AR verbs, for the yo form, if the subject is yo, you would, and yo means I and me, you would drop the AR and add an O. For the tu form, which is the you in an informal way, you would drop the AR and add an AS. For the ella, and usted forms, you would drop the AR and add an A. Usted is a formal way to say you. And for the L form, notice how there's an accent on the E. This is the way to distinguish between the article el and the word el, which means he. For the nosotros form, which means we, you would drop the AR and add an amos, AMOS. For the vosotros form, which means you guys in an informal way, you would drop the AR and add an A accented IS, or ice. For the ellos, ellas, and ustedes form, which means them and you guys in a formal way, you would drop the AR and add an AN. Vosotros form is actually only used in Spain, and for other countries, you should use the ustedes form as default. You should choose ellos and ellas depending on the subject. If the subject is all masculine or they're mixed, you should use ellos. If they're all feminine, you should use ellas. The ER verbs conjugate similarly. For the yo form, it's still o, but for the tu form, el, ella, usted forms, nosotros, vosotros, and ellos, ellas, ustedes forms, you should drop the a from you should drop the e from an you should drop the er, sorry, and add an es, e, emos, ace, and n respectively. Ir verbs also conjugate similarly to er verbs. They conjugate similarly so that the yo form, tu form, el, ella, usted form, and ellos, ellas, ustedes form are the exact same. However, the nosotros forms and vosotros form are a little different. For nosotros, instead of an hemos, it's an imos with an I in the beginning. The vosotros form does get a little more different than that. Instead of an ace with the er verbs, it's an is, just an accented I and an s with the ir. For example, let's take a look at three different verbs with three different endings. Hablar, which means to talk, comer, which means to eat, and escribir, which means to write. They all conjugate differently, and conjugate is just a fancy word for change. Yo hablo, tú hablas, él, ella, usted habla, nosotros hablamos, vosotros habláis, ellos, ellas, ustedes hablan. These are all the conjugations for hablar. Comer conjugates differently because it is an ER verb. Yo como, tú comes, él, ella, usted come, nosotros comemos, vosotros coméis, ellos, ellas, ustedes comen. Escribir also conjugates differently, but it conjugates similarly to comer, since an IR verb conjugates similarly to an ER verb. Yo escribo, tú escribes, él, ella, usted escribe. Nosotros escribimos, vosotros escribís, ellos, ellas, ustedes escriben. Looking at them side by side can help you realize that there are different patterns between the conjugations, such as the vast similarities between the conjugations of AR and ER verbs, and the almost near similarity with the conjugations of ER and IR verbs. Whenever you see an oye, which means listen up or watch it, it contains a useful tip for you, which will make your Spanish experience more pleasurable. Let's talk about the two most important verbs in Spanish now, ser and estar. Both of them mean to be, and they're used similarly with their English counterparts. However, the difference is that, wait, there are two of them, and both of them are irregular, and they don't conjugate regularly according to the ER, AR, and IR rule. The conjugations are as follows. Yo soy, tú eres, él, ella, usted es, nosotros somos, vosotros sois, ellos, ellas, ustedes son. These are all the conjugations for the ser form, which are completely different from what they should be. So you should remember this. The estar form is a little more easier to understand. Yo estoy, tú estás, él, ella, usted está. Nosotros estamos, vosotros estáis, ellos, ellas, ustedes están. Notice how I said it was a little easier to understand. Since the forms are pretty much the same except for the yo form, which has an o instead of esto, it's estoy. The tú form, él, ella, usted form, and ellos, ellas, ustedes form all have accents on the last a. This is what distinguishes estar as a regular verb, including the yo form, of course. To remember what ser and estar are used for, you should use the mnemonic devices doctor and place. Here are a few examples of how they were used. Ser. D is for date. Hoy es March 14th. Well, I'm not going to say, if I want to say the date in Spanish, I'm not going to say March 14th. I'm going to say something different, which I will show you later. O is for occupation. Soy un profesor, which means I am a professor. Professor is an occupation. Characteristics, which is C. Eres guapo, which means you are young, and young is a characteristic. T is time. Son las 9 en la noche, which means it is 9 o'clock. Origin. Soy de los Estados Unidos, which means I am from the United States. You can only originate from one country. R is for relationship. Nosotros somos los hijos, which means we are the children, which is a relationship. Estar is different. You can remember what is used for with the mnemonic device place. P is for position. Está abajo de la mesa, which is a prepositionary sentence stating that it is under the table. I'll teach you all these prepositions later. Just bear with me here. L is for location. Estamos en la clase, which means we are in the class. It's a location. Action. Estoy enseñando, which means I am teaching. You will learn this a lot later when we learn progressive tenses. C is for condition. ¿Estás cansado? Which I'm asking you a question, which I'm asking you if you're tired. E is for emotion. Están felices, which means they or you guys informally are happy. Now let's do a little practice quiz. What you want to do here is you want to replace the blank with the conjugated form of the verb given. The last three in this side are all verbs we haven't listed yet, but they are all normal. Just chill. Yo, blank, and you should replace it with comer. Tú, blank, replace it with the form of escribir. Nosotros, blank, replace it with the form of hablar. Ellos, blank, you should replace it with the form of saber, which means to know. The ellos form is normal for saber, so you'll be fine. Vosotros, blank, replace it with the form of vivir. Vivir means to live, and it's a regular verb. Ella, blank, replace it with the form of the verb llamar. Remember the phrase I told you, ¿Cómo te llamas? Llamar means to call, and it's a regular verb. Now the last four questions all have to do with ser and estar. Tú, blank, replace it with estar. Nosotros, blank, replace it with the form of ser. Yo, blank, replace it with the form of ser again. And el, blank, replace it with the form of estar. I want you to pause the video because I'm gonna show the answers as well. You should take some time and think about these yourself before I show the answers. Well, here are the answers. The first question is yo como. Since the subject here is yo and the verb you're replacing it with is comer, you would want to drop the er and add an o, giving you the sentence yo como. The next question is tú escribes. The reason behind this is because the subject here is tú, and the verb I'm asking you to replace the blank with is escribir. You would conjugate escribir in the tú form, which is escribes. The next question is nosotros hablamos. I wanted you to replace the blank with the form of hablar. Since the subject here is nosotros, you'd replace it with hablamos, which is the conjugated nosotros form of hablar. Ellos saben is the next one. Since Saber is an ER verb, and Eos is the subject. You would drop the ER from saber and add an EN, giving you the sentence Ellos saben. The next question is Vosotros vivís. I asked you to replace the blank with the form of vivir, which is an IR verb. The vosotros form of vivir, since it is an IR verb, is vivís. So giving you the sentence Vosotros vivís. Ella blank, which is the last question that does not have to do with Ser and Estar. The answer here is ella llama. The reason behind this is the verb llamar is a regular verb, and since its ella form is, you just drop the AR and add an A, giving you llama. The final sentence is ella llama. The last the last four have to do with estar and ser. Let's go over them. Tú blank. The answer for this one is tú estás. You would conjugate estar in the tú form, which is estás. Don't forget the accent, okay? That's a big thing. Nosotros blank. Conjugate it with the verb ser. Since the verb ser is irregular, its nosotros form is actually somos. So you would replace the blank with somos. Yo blank and replace it with the form ser. Again, the verb ser and the star are both irregular verbs. And the yo form of ser is actually soy. So you would get the sentence yo soy. Finally, the last question. El blank. Replace it with the form of estar. The conjugated form, the conjugated el form of estar is está. Keep in mind, don't forget the accent here. Thank you for watching.